Okay, and we are live. So welcome everybody. This is Aleš and Raphael again. You may not have recognized us because Raphael is much sleeker today than usual, and the bar was already high to start with. So that's pretty cool. You may not have recognized me because I'm in a shabbier environment than ever. And this is pushing the envelope. I am taking this from my mom's place. And there are some decluttering issues all around me, which I'm gonna have to kind of battle because I see it on my screen. Anyway, good to have you with us. Good to be here with you again, Raphael. Today we're going to be talking about everything as usual, but our kind of a focal point would be sustainable lifestyle. Last time we talked about not planning for retirement but planning for life. We're gonna dive deeper into this topic a little bit and see what comes up for both of us, but also what comes up for you. So please be with us. If you have any comments or questions, put them in the chat as usual. And I'm gonna shut up now and hand it over to Raphael. So over to you, Raphael. How is it for you?
Oh, it's good. It's good. I'm looking forward to this conversation today. We talked about designing your ideal lifestyle as opposed to working towards retirement. Maybe not as opposed to, but in conjunction to would be a good thing. And the way that you kind of titled today's call was more designing a sustainable lifestyle. So I think we should clarify what that means for each of us and what that means in general, right? When we're talking sustainability in this context, we're not talking about saving the dolphins or the turtles, although I'm all for that as well, please. So that helps too. But what does it mean to have a sustainable lifestyle? To me, it means a lifestyle that you can keep up, right? So, you can take on a lot and burn yourself out. And sometimes that's kind of necessary to find what you're capable of. And I think that's where a lot of growth happens. So there's a difference here between your ideal lifestyle and a sustainable lifestyle. So again, I think this comes back to defining your own success, which I think is a really key, one of the first key steps to this path of self-development and self-improvement. Because if you don't have a clear idea of what you're working towards, what are you going to be working towards? How does that sound to you?
I like you mentioned the sustainability predicament, because when I was looking for the thumbnail images for this video, I was like, should it be like a plant growing, or was the sustainable lifestyle in terms of planetary resources? And we may touch upon that, but that really is not our major concern for the day. It's really how do you make sure that you can live your life, a quality life, in a way that wouldn't deplete you completely. And for me, I think what's interesting for me is how to marry this with the idea of growth, because we always say that everything's cool as long as you're growing and learning, and the growth, as in economy, the idea of the GDP growth, it kind of builds the expectation that every other step is going to be bigger, faster, stronger, and if it's not, like for example, the effect of pandemics or everything, GDP goes down, muscle mass disappears, replaced by fat. Speaking from experience, when it's not up or forward, it may feel like a failure. So for me, really, the question is growth something we should be aiming at all times? And if we do, what does the growth means? Do we need to redefine it in a way that there is one area where we are growing and disregard the areas where we're not growing, or is the concept flawed completely? Too many questions, I guess, but that's what's coming up for me.
quite a bit to unpack there. So I like to remind myself that growth is not always linear. The coach that we like to work with recently, Adam Quiney, likes to differentiate between growth and transformation. And some people argue that growth is always happening, whether you recognize it, and whether it's happening in the area of your life that you would like it to be happening is another question. You may be growing your finances. Maybe you're making quite a bit of money at your job and you're miserable and you don't have a lot of space in your life for anything else that's important. This again goes back to defining your success. Is that enough of an indicator? I mean, there are plenty of people with, swelling bank accounts that are quite miserable and aren't really living the type of life that they want to, and maybe that's not sustainable for them. And for some people, that is like the biggest indicator. That's the marker they're looking for. That's where they're looking to move the needle. So again, I think this is very personal. I think it's worth taking the time to, and I think this is something that needs to be revisited frequently, because your priorities a year ago may be very differently than they are now, different than they are now, rather. So for me personally, I like to experiment, and I'm always pushing myself in various places. Again, I like to remind myself that growth is not linear. So whether we're talking about finances or whether we're talking about health, sometimes we have setbacks. And I think it's part of the sustainable word that we like to use here is being able to kind of build resilience and recover from those setbacks and to play the long game, right? Because as we all know, short-term gains, often don't add up long-term, and we can sacrifice a lot for that. So, I think it's really worth the time to check in with yourself and have a clear definition of what it is you want to create in your own life. Finances certainly should be a part of that. They help support us in the other things that we want to be doing, health as well. But yeah, how would you like to spend your days now? And how would you like to spend your days 5 years from now? And what needs to happen? What kind of systems need to be put in place to help support you in making that a reality, and not constantly pushing this life that you envision for yourself to some far off date in the future that may never come? This is the life we have. I like to meditate on my own mortality regularly and recognize that I don't know how many days I have left on this earth. Hopefully very many, but things happen. So I like to work towards living that life now rather than later. Again, this is very personal, and this means something else for everyone. I mean, if you're in a job that you don't particularly like, and your ideal lifestyle is to sleep until noon, you might have to reevaluate that. There might be some things, but there are certain aspects of that you can start to weave into your life, right? Like maybe it's really important for you to spend time outside. Maybe you need to make sure you give yourself time on weekends to go explore nature or socialize with friends or build relationships, whatever it is that you're looking for. And maybe we can talk a little bit about what it's like for us personally, what you're looking to create in your life, Alesh, and what would be a sustainable way to do that. What would support you in that?
I really like that you are bringing us back to the topic of setting up mechanisms or habits that would allow us to kind of through incremental steps edge into this space of the life that we desire for ourselves. I think what I'm wondering about for myself right now and also early in my life is what is the place, what is the destination where I want to be? And I know we discussed the idea of retirement or planning for it. Last time we touched upon the metaphors of coasting, right? So if you bike, you pedal for a while, then you can coast. And I think the vision of the perfect lifestyle for most of us in the Western society is, where is the place from which I can coast all the way to eternity, and I don't have to do a thing. It's just gonna go on autopilot. So I think it's important to outline. For me personally, it took me years and years to realize that it doesn't work like that, and it never will. And however much you accumulate, you may reach financial independence that would allow you to coast, but it will not grant you eternal happiness. The happiness doesn't work, or contentment doesn't work in terms of coasting. That's the biggest revelation, I guess, for me at this point of my life.
Yeah, I think if the goal is to have a life that's entirely free of worries, that's no longer a goal. That's just a pipe dream, because that doesn't exist. There aren't, I mean, maybe there are some people that live in some sort of world of perpetual bliss, and maybe they're wealthy, maybe they're not. I would argue that it's likely that they aren't wealthy, and they've probably, given up on possessions, and that's probably likely to lead to the ultimate freedom. So yeah, this idea of coasting, if your ideal lifestyle is to retire and sit and, I don't know, play video games or whatever it is that people fantasize about doing nothing. You don't really need to work your whole life to get there. You can do that now, and you can probably figure out a way, a very low cost way of living that would facilitate that type of lifestyle now. So this idea of coasting, when I think of an ideal lifestyle for myself, I think about a willingness to be uncomfortable and getting good at that. So being able to kind of flow with a discomfort. In other words, getting good at doing the shit that I don't really want to do, because I see that as a never-ending part of life. Right now there are parenting woes and managing a farm and relationships and, trying to develop a coaching business and all these things. And there are a lot of parts of that are very enjoyable to me, that give me a kind of enthusiasm for life. And then there are parts of that I really don't like, that make me want to shut down, that make it feel hard, and make me want to be lazy and turn away from a lot of that stuff. So when I think about a sustainable lifestyle, I think about finding rhythms and systems that support me in being able to knock all that stuff out and enjoy the process. So I'm seeing life more and more as the ride and the process, and less about the destination, which we don't, you could say that there is no arrival, or that you've already arrived, however you'd like to look at it. But this is what we have. And so if we're spending our entire life working towards some abstract future self, when my bank account is to this point, then I'll be able to track my expenses, or, once I lose 20 pounds or gain 20 pounds or whatever it is you're trying to do, then I can do this thing. Once I get this promotion, then I'll start getting serious about, getting into a relationship, whatever, constantly delaying the thing that we want to do. There's really no end to that. And we all do it, and it's very normal, very natural thing to be doing. So how can we start living now more and more? How can we start getting in touch with the type of life we'd like to have, and start going after it? And that looks different for everyone. I mean, if you're stuck doing something that you don't particularly want to be doing, and you have a very hard exit out of that, you have to get creative, and you have to do little things that support you in your life. If you don't have all day to train, and exercise is very important to you, maybe you need to wake up really fucking early. Maybe you have to, you're going to have to suffer a little bit in order to get in order to put some of these things in place that will support you long-term. And I think a lot of it is figuring out what doesn't work. When we use words like ideal and sustainable, it can sound really clean. Like, oh, we're going to have this plan, we're going to execute it, and everything's going to be awesome. In practice, we take on something new, and something that we've been doing pretty good at might fall and go, man, I don't have the bandwidth to tackle all this stuff I've been doing, plus this new thing I want to be doing. Like, where's the time? So that's for me, I've found that that's a huge part of it, is figuring out what I cannot do currently, and what's worth doubling up on effort and creating new systems in order to continue supporting that. And also looking at, what can I let go of? What can I say no to in my life? Sometimes we get in the habit of doing things and we believe that they're a totally essential part of us. And often, if we take a closer look, some of those things can be let go of.
Yeah, I think I really like a couple of ideas that you mentioned. Starting from the end, actually, letting go activities or some time commitments. We touched upon that in some of the earlier episodes, like trying to do a little trade-offs. So deciding, I decided not to watch YouTube for some time, and it freed up time that could have been used elsewhere. There's always something that could be traded off. You rarely ever have everything optimized to a point where where there's no other place to dig. And I also really like the idea of the definition you offered, the sustainable strength or grit to lean into the discomfort where needed. To build up on that, I think what I love the most about our talks is something that was the most difficult for me about it, I guess, dropping the perfectionism. Like, my idea of the perfect lifestyle is this, perfect, spotless, minimalist household. And, I'm going to touch upon this background again a little bit. So everything is perfect. Everything is organized already. You are there. You have arrived in a place where there are no distractions. There are no squeaky doors and dogs barking on Raphael's hand. And there is no, stuff in the background that was not decluttered in my case. But that's not how it works. It really, the mess is not something to get over and be done with for good. There's always going to be some sort of mess, and sometimes it's visible, sometimes you can hear it, sometimes it's in your mind, sometimes it's the stuff that's falling off the plate because you are trying to implement something new, and being comfortable with it and doing what we're doing. That's what I am learning to appreciate as the lifestyle I actually want to sustain.
Yeah, this is good stuff. You described with some detail the physical environment that you'd like to create for yourself. And I think you've been working towards that. You've made a few videos on decluttering, and at least from what we can see on camera in your living space, it seems to be pretty free of clutter and pretty simple. So what I'm hearing is that simplicity and a lack of clutter, a lack of things that will distract you is something that's important to you. And this is one part of life. This is like the visual. This is what we can see and feel. We go into a space, we can see cluttered versus organized and, minimalist. And so then there's the next question. Okay, so you can achieve having nothing pretty easily, right? If you can get over that urge to hold on to things and let them go. And then what? What is that? Why is that important? What does that free up for you, Alesh? Why is it important to have a space that is free of clutter, free of excess possessions? And what does that then enable you to do with your time and space?
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's about it. It's originally I thought, I want to kind of simplify down to the bare bone and just to have the this kind of clairvoyance of the future free of obstacles and emptiness as the eternal bliss. But yeah, it's not about that. It's about what greater things you can take on thanks to this, thanks to liberating yourself from these, let's say, less essential things that has less meaning in your life. And that's how I'm trying to approach that. The problem, or the I wouldn't say the problem. Problem is something to solve, but the nature of life, yeah, it's always messy. It's always going to be, there's always going to be something that's going to be kind of itching back in and trying to reconquer the space. That's this that you freed for yourself. That's this constant effect of entropy, right? The chaos. Chaos is the default. It's and we need to fight it off in a way that doesn't lead to the burnout, that gives us this, I think, daily workout, fighting off the chaos and creating the space for meaningful commitments for ourselves. That maybe sounds too hefty, but yeah, that's it sounds true.
Yeah. So I'm curious to hear what that means to you in fighting chaos. Does that translate into for instance, the clutter and the physical space, not allowing possessions to kind of get take over your life, or is there more to that when you think of chaos for yourself?
Yeah, it's I see where you're going in that, and I have to say I kind of escaped. I let myself the hook of that question. So let's go a little personal, because that's
Sure.
what I think can bring value in here, of course, to other people as well. So what I'm struggling with currently is the idea of or the commitment to organize organize my time in a way that would be clear and streamlined and transparent. So in my head, the ideal lifestyle, which I believe is sustainable. So I kind of welded together these two, maybe not properly, is the life without the mess when it comes to time planning. So I think, yeah, I can make a mess when creating something, but it should all happen in a time container I pre-assigned for that. So the ideal me is someone who doesn't miss appointments, which Raphael, I did, because we had a common appointment together yesterday, and I totally blanked on that. Uh, Someone who knows what's going to happen in the next hour, a couple of hours, someone who's organized in terms of dealing with the inboxes on all those social medias and Gmail and Yahoo and you name it, and someone who kind of knows where he's going in terms of time commitments. Let's say for the next 2-3 weeks, I always admire those people. That's something I would like to create for
Yeah.
myself. I kind of believe that would open up possibilities for me, but I seem to be unable to do that.
I think you just described the ideal assistant, Alesh. Maybe that's where you ought to be looking into. Knows what you got going on the next 3 hours. You're not going to be late to appointments. Got 2 weeks ahead. All your stuff, inboxes. You just figured it out. You didn't even know it. It was right there the whole time. So we all need assistance.
Oh yeah, but who's gonna assist the assistants? Huh? That's tricky.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's funny with these assistants, they don't really help as much as they should. So they are supposed to assist us, but sometimes I feel more that I'm assisting them to get more clicks on the.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they have kind of hijacked boredom, which is such an essential part of life. I think I think it's often when you would get bored prior to cell phones, it would be a great opportunity to maybe tidy up or do something that color code your closet, whatever it is that floats your boat. Reach out to someone, actually, phone call, whatever. And now it's just incredibly easy to fill every moment of free time we have with some mindless scrolling or consumption of information, very little of which we actually retain. For me, part of the sustainable and ideal lifestyle when in regards to digital life is having a more empowered experience with that. So really going in with intention, saying, okay, I'll dedicate the next 30 or 45 minutes to connecting with a few people on Facebook. I'm going in with a plan. I intend to connect through this group, or maybe it's open, but within a container. I think you mentioned this earlier in this call, kind of going in with a plan, setting a timer, and then being able to be fully there, not having that guilt or shame that we all feel, scrolling on the toilet or whatever you find yourself doing, which isn't really feeding that craving that we're after. It's this, like, you get the little dopamine kick, and then it wears off, and then the next thing, and it's so tempting, even during maybe a boring Zoom group call or something, to open a tab and play around here or look over there. So yeah, for me, that's something I've been working towards, and I feel doing pretty good. I think I've mentioned it before. When I see my screen time on my phone, it's almost like directly correlated to how my week has gone. When it's down 30, 40%, I've just been having a phenomenal week. I'm moving more. I feel like I'm riding a wave of momentum physically, and just feel more in control and in charge and less passive. And when I don't have a clear plan or clear goals that I'm after for the day or the week, then I can get a little bit lost at that and end up being considerably less productive. Yeah.
I'm thinking, this is something that's like an eternal theme for me, and I've heard it from a couple of my friends. So I think it's fairly universal, and it seems that we don't talk about it so much. It's the question of balance. So I'm gonna call it this, pedaling and coasting. So I said, yeah, you can always take more, you can always optimize, you can always kind of trade activities for something more meaningful. The question from my friends often is, and I don't have a good answer, okay, but where does it stop? Live a little. You need to kind of also have unstructured time, and you also need to learn how to enjoy life. I had it a lot with this cold shower month, like month without water. Many people didn't get it at all. They were like, why are you torturing yourself? What's in there? And on one level, I understand why I'm doing it. It's to push the boundaries. At the same time, sometimes I feel that by pushing the boundaries, I am really depriving myself of the simple pleasures or the joys of the moment. And I don't mean just creature comforts. I mean really this idea of not having a plan, or just being, or playing the video game in the couch, and not doing anything.
Yeah.
What comes up for you?
I'm glad you touched on this. This is really important, because we know through research that novel experiences are important in life. They help people feel joy. So I think there's a differentiation here. I'm certainly not advocating that you should live every day with strict rigidity and discipline. If that's what serves you, great. And for some people, that is what they're after, and that's what they need. What more I'm advocating for is, what is it going to take to allow yourself the space to have those novel experiences? So again, we're back to the empowered. So if you want to spend time playing video games, or if you want to have days where you don't have any plan at all, that's great. But what do you need to do in your life to sustain that? And, at what point you do that for a day and it's fun. And if you do that for 3 days, you're like, this sucks. I need something to do. And again, I think it's very personal. It's different for everyone. I find myself that if I have, and I've been self-employed for many years now, so this is something that I've had to really learn to manage my own time. I don't have anyone that I need to answer to. I don't have anyone that's gonna give me shit if I don't show up or if I don't do a thing that I planned on doing. So I have to create this structure for myself completely, and have had to for a very long time. And for many years, my social life was a lot like it has been for most of us the last year, just kind of not really existent, kind of getting deprioritized, really enjoying the quiet space, working in the garden, working from home has its advantages and disadvantages in that way. And yeah, I found myself after a while kind of craving more of that and more novel experiences. Structure has been good, but then there's something to be desired. So if that's something that's important to you, absolutely, you should 100% figure out a way to make that a regular part of your life in an empowered way. So by choice, saying, I just want a weekend and I'm not going to make any plans. And if I feel like going out, I'm going to go out. If I feel like staying home and playing games, that's what I'm going to do. Whatever it is that you need to do. What do you need to do long-term with your life to make that something that you can afford to do, that you can sustain?
Yeah, it's very true. It's as you mentioned, with the social with the social networks and the media set up in a way to kind of give us this dopamine rush. There's I see it in my environment. I see it in myself. There's this strong element of FOMO, the fear of missing out, and some people have it with news. I've seen with pandemics. Many people did that, and some of them still do, even though there's a lot of fatigue. Just catching the new data about what's going on, and now they are tracking the vaccination progress and everything. I have it sometimes with work tasks. So the idea is, I've been depriving myself unconsciously from experiencing this time off by thinking about the work tasks I could be doing. So it's like, hey, I'm gonna take a day off, but I'm constantly gonna be thinking about what I could have been or should have been tackling, and I'm not gonna permit myself to do that, but I will actually spoil the experience for myself. And I think that's what many of us do when it comes to planning for the future. Oh, I need to save for retirement equals I need to torture myself now. So
Yeah.
that's this kind of vicious equation that I believe we can shift, but at the moment it doesn't always feel easy or possible even.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even a whole weekend. Sometimes you're just in between tasks and maybe choose to take a little bit of time, and you're neither here nor there. You're not really letting go and going, "Oh, I'm going to rest for 20 minutes."
Exactly.
You're already, your mind is already on the thing that you should be doing. And so now you're not doing the thing, and you're not really getting the value out of the time that you're not doing that thing. That's exactly what I mean when I say an empowered choice of choosing to say, okay, I'm going to do nothing for the next 20 minutes, whatever, fill in the blank with your nothing, whatever nothing is for you. If that means YouTube or whatever, some online thing, great. Do it fully and say, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm going to go in fully and enjoy this, not with this like guilt in the back of my mind of, oh, I should be doing something else, but I'm just going to keep scrolling just one more little bit. And you're on an infinite scroll. So a little bit doesn't work out too well. So yeah, how do we have the clarity of mind to recognize that? For me, the mindfulness practice has been hugely beneficial for this, because I can notice that thought process. So I'll notice myself not being present with whatever it is that I'm doing, and kind of already fantasizing about the task or, various to-do list, whatever it is that I think I ought to be doing instead. And in that moment, I can make a choice to either enjoy what it is that I'm doing, be it nothing or whatever it is I happen to be doing, or work towards the other thing. Lately, my life has kind of been pretty busy, so there aren't a lot of these big downtime moments. There's always some, when this call is over, pick my kids up from school, and then the next thing, and then next thing you know, we're getting ready for dinner. And so being able to, again, enjoy the ride, I've had to find a way where doing the dishes is enjoyable, or the things that I know I have to do anyway. Like, can you make those enjoyable? I'm not saying it's like, it's not like the time of your life, but there is a way in which we can be fully present with whatever we happen to be doing at the time. And it's a practice. It's a practice, and part of that practice is recognizing that it won't always work and just returning again and again. And that's why it's a practice. But I've found that personally incredibly helpful and kind of liberating, to take off some of that weight of feeling like you always ought to be doing something else. Yeah.
It's actually had me thinking about some of my friends and even myself at times with this with the COVID restrictions. The idea that you're putting your mind out there into the activity that you can't be doing, and you are mentally, I want to go abroad, I want to travel, and I can't. And because it's not by choice, or you feel it's not by choice, you're kind of torturing your mind through this idea of something that's not accessible. And the activity that you might be enjoying at the moment, like as you said, gardening or just simple pleasures, would feel much better if you didn't compare it with this inaccessible dream of something that suddenly is not available to you.
Sure.
Yeah, that's one thing I wanted to ask you about, Raphael, though. It's, you mentioned there's a choice in there, and that's something I always struggle with. So the choice about enjoying the activity in the present. So I am 100% with you on the importance of mindfulness practice. I think we mentioned already Sam Harris Waking Up, which is your favorite meditation guide. There's an app, Waking Up, that you can get on multiple devices. I have personally been using Adam Paddycombe's Headspace app, which is similar.
I hear
Both of them guided meditation. And that can bring us to awareness, and I recommend it highly to everybody. However, you mentioned, and then there's a choice. Do you enjoy or do you not? It doesn't feel like a choice at the moment. There's the awareness, say, yeah, this sucks. I am unhappy. There's this sense of unease. There's this sense of disturbance in my mind. I really wish I was, traveling to Costa Rica or wherever right now. The awareness itself doesn't bring you to the idea of control. At least for me, it doesn't work that way. I can notice something sucks. What's the next step? How do you get to the choice?
Let's play with this a little bit, and maybe we don't use the word enjoy, but the key word that you said was notice. So if you're actually noticing, let's go back to something that we all probably do, hopefully, is wash dishes. So you're washing dishes, maybe you're just going through the motion, you're thinking about something else. That's what most of us do most of the time. You could be doing it kind of with a sour face, fuck these dishes, whatever. If you actually notice and you recognize, this is what I'm doing right now, it's not that it becomes fun. It's not that suddenly, oh, this is great. But if you're actually clearly in the moment, there's a kind of letting go of the idea that you should be doing something else, and just this being fully with what you happen to be doing. That's where the freedom is that so much of our time is in these in-between moments in life, right? And this is something you have to do regularly. by kind of letting go of the need for it to be different than how it is, you're kind of creating a more positive experience in that way. It's a lack of resistance. The ultimate resistance is, I'm not going to do it. And you've probably been to some people's houses where dishes pile up and maybe several meals or even worse worth. And that's the ultimate resistance, right? And then it takes this like monumental amount of effort to get to it. The other side of that is just being with it as it comes. And there's a certain ease that we can access by just going with that flow. And you've probably heard stories of, for instance, custodians or janitors that then win the lottery and choose to remain at their job. There are at least a couple of accounts of this actually happening. You have to ask yourself, why? Why would somebody do that? Most people wouldn't. I wouldn't. But it's not completely nuts to me either. Like I get it. There's a certain zenness in the act. There's a certain pride. Like, okay, I'm doing this work. Somebody's got to do this work. We're cleaning this space. There's a way in which we can just ease into the experience. One of the first things I do a lot of mornings before I make coffee is I walk from my front door about 100 yards to where my chicken coop is. And usually at that time of day, they're very eager to get out. That walk is this opportunity to kind of set myself up for the day. And a lot of mornings I'm lost in thought, like most people. But often I see this clarity as soon as I start walking, and I'm like, okay, this is the beginning of my day. This is an activity. And I just slowed down just a little bit and do it in a way that's kind of respectful of myself and my time, and seeing it as a choice and not just something to get through. I'm raising 11-year-old children, so instilling this into them is a massive challenge. Like my son especially is constantly rushing through every activity because his mind is already on like, I want to play Nintendo or whatever it is. So seeing that and being able to model a different choice or a different way, that's what I mean by choice. It's not that everything has to turn into like, oh, this is so joyful and this is so wonderful. No, it's just the opposite of resisting it is how I see it. And I found it hugely liberating. The difference between getting through a big dinner worth of dishes in that mindset versus the one of like, damn, why am I stuck with this? Why do I have to do this? It's a lot easier. It goes by a lot quicker. Yeah. That's my rant.
It's no, that's perfect. I realized that there's something I want to contribute with. So I'm in my space of resistance. So this is my mom's house and her husband's house, and I always had and still do have a lot of resistance when it comes to the surrounding here. So I have a lot of judgment around it. And Raphael, I'm going to get back to making the dishes, doing the dishes. It's really whenever I visit, I love seeing my mom. I'm really happy to be with her, and these visits are far less frequent now due to the travel restrictions. However, the house and the surrounding brings up a lot of judgment in me, and just I think just for the fun of it, I keep looking at what's available in here.
Yeah, is there an AOL CD somewhere back there?
Yeah, look at that. There's this is like a memory lane. So my mom still has these cassette tapes, which I don't, your 11-year-old maybe never seen in the flesh, and it's here. And just seeing this, it always is like, Mom, why do you have this? why the hell do you have something that says
You,
1997 on its
you
cover?
might need it, Alesh.
And uh, the point is, the, the point I'm trying to make is um, that the awareness, if I kind of pay attention to what is coming up for me when I'm around, with some guidance I got from Leo Babauta and also Raphael and some other friends, is that the awareness allows me better separate the reality and the story I build around it, or the judgment. So, you know, the item itself is not right or wrong. When I say the book is here, that's a reality, or assuming, unless it's my imagination, but assume that's a reality. The idea that the book should not be here, it should be in the dumpster, that's my story around that. And that's the resistance I'm actually building in my head. And the same with the dishes. You are doing the dishes. That's the fact. And that's all that's a fact. And the way you approach it, the story you build around that. I mean, are you mad at the dishes, at yourself, or are you leaning into it? That's what can bring the contentment at the moment.
Yes. Yes, or even not contentment, but just again the absence of the resistance to it. I mean, if you're resisting and you're doing it anyway, that's a negative experience. And you're creating that for yourself, plain and simple. Nobody's creating that for you. It's the way in which you're relating to it. So that's something we should take a look at, especially if we're talking about sustainability. If you have a really awful, and we'll just stick with dishes for now because this is like the universal thing, right? We all eat, and most of us have dishes to wash unless you're eating takeout every day. Relationships end over this stuff. I mean, this is like a big point of contention, housework in general, right? So the way you relate to this can be the difference between a relationship being sustainable and not sustainable. Kind of dividing the duties, or how you feel about it. If you're growing in resentment because you're the only one, or at least in your mind, you're the only one that's taking care of this, and why is it always you, and it's so unfair, and you're just feeding this wolf every time you do it again and again, that's not sustainable. That is likely to lead to some kind of breakdown eventually. So coming from a more clear place, that's something that we can change our relationship with it and address it if there is an imbalance that needs some attention. If it is time for somebody else to step up, and if you feel like it's not, equal in some way.
Yes, it's. I'm wondering. You mentioned the idea of feeding, or like feeding the resentment, feeding the resistance.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's even in a moment that I'm able to recognize that. Sometimes it's very deeply ingrained. It just seems to go on autopilot. Oh, not
Mm-hmm.
again, and then it goes,
Mm-hmm.
and the wheel starts turning. Does that happen to you as well, or do you have a recipe regarding how to access the situation? Would you allow yourself to get angry and then kind of reflect? How would you
Mm-hmm.
tackle
Mm-hmm.
this?
Yeah, it does absolutely still happen to me, but it's fewer and farther between. So I'm less easily triggered by things. I still get upset, and I will refrain from saying something like my kids make me angry, which, is something very common to say, because I now recognize that my kids don't make me angry. They behave in a way and I react in another way to that. As I continue to deepen into the mindfulness training and kind of address anything else that needs to be addressed within myself, I'm able to recognize my reactions much more quickly. So often I feel like there's some space between the behavior and my response to it. That's the difference between a reaction and a response, right? A reaction is knee jerk. The kids are shouting, I shout back. That's a reaction. A response is calmly walking down the stairs, choosing my words, facing one of my children and quietly expressing what it is that I need to change about the behavior. Sometimes it doesn't work. And sometimes that continues and continues. And then I have to, figure out another way. But to answer your question, absolutely, it still happens. The half-life is shorter and it happens less frequently. So there is a sense of, okay, I'm in control. And if it does happen, and if I do lose it, I may feel a sort of kind of resentment towards my kids briefly, but really I feel that the responsibility lies on me completely, that it is up to me to deal with whatever's coming up for me as a result. And if my children, we'll just stay with this example, if my children are behaving in a way, like, how am I complicit in that happening? What do I need to create for them to guide them in a different direction? So this goes to a sense of kind of radical responsibility for ourself, and just recognizing that it's really up to us how we react. People will do things that trigger us, but we do have a choice in how we respond to that. And it takes a ton of practice. And this is something we have our entire life to work on. This is not something that we arrive at in some complete form, Yeah, I think Sam Harris told a story once on one of his episodes where his house, he had a plumbing issue and the house became flooded, and like downstairs water is leaking, and he's going into this kind of panic mode, and his wife says, "Aren't you glad it's not sewage water?" And it was like, bam, to him. Like, oh yeah, this is clean water. Imagine if it wasn't, and maybe it was. Like, okay. The point is that there is an option, but it does take training. The default, a lot of people default to this, there's a trigger, there's a reaction, and we live a lot of our life in this, and then we end up carrying a lot of tension and anger or resentment towards our spouse, and a lot of things don't get addressed. We just kind of push them down, take some space, come back, pretend nothing happened, then it happens again and again and again and again and again. So I think it really starts with ourselves, taking responsibility for ourselves and figuring that out. We spend a lot of our time in these in-between moments. So you have your job, you have your commute, you have your dinners and your relationships and your meetings. But what's the quality of your mind, both in those spaces and in between those spaces? What's the quality of your mind when you're walking to the car or the train or the Uber or whatever it is? The quality of your mind when you're preparing your dinner? Is it just something to get out of the way to get to the next thing? And then what's your quality of your mind there? We talked briefly about this feeling of being with something and then our mind being on a task that we ought to be doing. But what's your mind like when you're doing that task? Are you fully with it? Or are you thinking about how you're not good enough and you're going to screw it up and it's not enough and you should have done it a week ago and all this stuff, So there's no end to this kind of relentless. We had a whole episode about the inner critic, and I think we touched on this a little bit. So just to kind of tie this in, how does this tie into a sustainable lifestyle? Well, living in this way with so much resistance is fucking exhausting. And being perpetually exhausted is not sustainable. There are a lot of people who perform at a very high level that demand a lot of themselves, but are still energized and relatively content in their life. So exhaustion and output are not always the same. I think that some of the most exhausted times in my life were actually some of the most sedentary times of my life, where I was actually doing very little, moving very little. And I would argue, when I look back at that type of exhaustion, that was the most destructive for me. That was a type of exhaustion that I couldn't recover from with one night's sleep. That was inertia and a lack of momentum, which is something that I feel like now I live my life the very opposite of that. I'm very active and I build a lot of physical momentum, and I have a lot of kind of energy in that sense to put forth and into whatever I happen to be working on or with at the time. How does that land with you?
No, I like it. I actually think we're getting somewhere. So it's the creating this sense of space, or you basically energy or space, creating this kind of extra buffer that you can kind of move into to support whatever is meaningful for you at the moment. This I think that's what actually creates a sustainable lifestyle. And the steps you can take, the first ones could be very simple. So we mentioned the mindfulness practice, of course. There are also potential shift to do when it comes to the judgment around doing the dishes or whatever it is. So I'd like to offer one, a very small one that helped me, but it can be implemented in many areas. And that will be replacing or changing the way you phrase what's happening. So as Raphael said, it's like, my kids upset me. No, it can be phrased differently. The very easy one that helped me with shopping less was replacing the word need with the word want. I need new shoes. No, you don't. You don't. You just want them. And using these things, saying I want instead of I need, or I choose to do something instead of I have to do something. Maybe choose sounds too far-fetched, but you can. It was suggested to me to say, I get to wake up today to do all these chores. It puts some space between you and the judgment. It allows you to realize that you are in charge, essentially, rather than, hey, I need new shoes, so what else can I do? I'm a helpless victim of shopping because I have to.
Yeah, that's huge. Reframing it. I had a little post-it up in my room that said, you get to do taxes. And I think I turned in the very last of it on the extended deadline tax day, which is kind of classic for me. So yes, I still procrastinate. And something like taxes is a perfect example of something that I would rather kind of push off until the last minute, out of sight, out of mind. But yeah, reframing it in that way, you get to do this. You own a business. You are living in a first world country, and you're paying taxes, Yeah.
Yeah, I had to master all my attention and all my mental practice, because the visual effects, Raphael, is kind of stealing the attention from the wisdom you're providing.
Cat? Yeah, the cat's famous now.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's very good. That should actually give us more views. Lolcats are trendy still, I guess.
I think so. You know what? Why didn't we get the cat out in the beginning of the episode? That's really where it's at.
Yeah. No, it should be on a thumbnail next time. Absolutely.
Yeah, it should have been, the title should have been something like "How Cats Can Help You Live a More Sustainable Lifestyle." Yeah, we need to rework this plan.
But we're getting there. And because we are about to close, I think that this may be the time to reiterate what we are after. So both Raphael and myself, we are striving to kind of lean into this and do what we believe is a meaningful work, and we are playing with it. And we intend to do this every week. It used to be Wednesdays, but now we are aiming at this time every Tuesday. Is that correct, Raphael?
Correct. That is correct. And this is actually our fifth, not our fourth, Alesh.
Oh, really?
You wrote fourth on it. Yes. Can you believe it?
Oh, God.
We're going for
I need to fix it. And it's, Yeah, and it's so, that's another thing. I don't want to open it up. Maybe that's something that could be our topic for the next time. Getting through the first seconds of resistance. Whenever I was prepping for this, I was like, maybe this time, this is not perfect, and I'm in my mom's place. Maybe I can postpone. But there always is this kind of bliss when you get through the first hurdle, and I'm very happy in retrospect that we did all this.
Yeah, I am too, Alesh. And to kind of recap what Alesh was saying, what you were saying, Alesh, we're doing this. We've been having these conversations. We're interested in exploring personal growth, personal development, the kind of nuance of human suffering that we all deal with, and the things that get in our way. And so this is a place where we hope to do that. We hope to get viewers involved in the conversation. So again, if there's something that you would like to hear us talk about, please bring that forth. And yeah, we'll keep doing this.
Perfect. Thank you, Raphael. Thanks everybody for being with us. And hopefully we'll see you on Tuesday next week. So have a lovely evening if you're in Europe, and have a lovely morning, Raphael, right? If you are in the States. And see you next week.
Ciao. Thanks, Alesh.